Welcome to EcoResolution's conversation with Rob Greenfield, renowned activist and humanitarian dedicated to leading the world to a more sustainable and just place. Rob embarks on incredible projects to bring attention to global issues and inspire positive change, from growing and foraging 100% of his food for a year to highlight the broken industrial food system, to living like the average American and wearing every piece of trash he created for a month. He's vowed to earn less than the government's poverty threshold annually, lives without a bank account, credit card, monthly bill, insurance, or debt. He currently owns just 44 possessions, lives for the benefit of the earth and all its species, all while living a deeply purposeful and joyful life. So Rob, it's an enormous pleasure to be joined by you today. Firstly, I just wanted to ask what got you on this path. Did something happen in your life, and why such a radical lifestyle?
Sure. Well, it's nice to be chatting with you.
Yeah.
A little bit of sunshine in my day. Let's see. Okay. Well, in 2011, I was living a pretty typical American lifestyle, basically striving for the American dream. And I was happy. I was enjoying it. But what happened is I started to watch a lot of documentaries and read a lot of books. And I realized that my life was destroying the world. It was destroying other people, other species that we share the earth with, and the ecosystems that we depend upon. And I just wasn't okay with that. For me, it kind of was common sense. I realized that I was a complete hypocrite, that my actions were not in alignment with my belief system. And so I decided that I had to radically transform my life. I was 25 years old at the time, and I knew that if I lived to be 75, 80, that's another 5 decades on earth. I didn't want to live another 5 decades as a hypocrite, so it was time to turn things around. And I decided to just change my life one bit at a time. None of the individual steps to start with were necessarily radical in themselves, but all of it adding up together created a radically different life than I was living before.
Wow. And what do you think was the decision that had the biggest impact? Or what decision are you most proud of?
Well, no individual thing. It's about all of it adding up together. Life is an accumulation of, many intricate little parts of the web coming together. And the reality is today we live in a very complex, globalized, industrialized world where all of our little daily actions have ripples around the world in ways that we never would fathom. And unfortunately, the way our societies are designed today, most of those ripples are negative through the food that we eat and the cars that we drive and the cheap junk that we buy and the trash that we create. So for me, it's really about living an examined life and understanding my actions. And that to me it's the kind of the bigger picture. For me, what I'm proud of is working to put all the pieces of the puzzle together to try to live in a way where I can actually feel good about my existence here on earth.
And looking at everything you've done, waste and consumerism seem to be two really big themes, which you remedy by simple living, zero waste lifestyle, growing your own food. What are you most frustrated by in the current system?
What frustrates me most is the extreme inequality and injustice. I mean, in the advanced world we live in today, it just makes it's not reasonable at all for such a small percentage of the population to have such a huge amount of resources, while a huge percentage of the population doesn't have their basic needs met. If we want to call ourselves an advanced society, then I don't think we can get away with, the 1% having so much, while, a majority of people, so around 50% of people just don't have enough. And so that is what makes me the most angry, is just that injustice and inequality caused by our affluent, privileged lives.
And the impact of that life on the natural world as well?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, it's all hand in hand. Like, humans live in the natural world. There is no such thing in reality as an unnatural world and a natural world. It's all one world. I do separate it in my mind as well, because it's easier to separate like the city, not the natural world, and the beautiful nature being the natural world. But of course, it's all together. But injustice to nature is injustice to humanity. And the reality is that the way things are set up, injustice to humanity is injustice to nature, because when humans don't have their needs met, they're not able to live in a way where they can be regenerating the earth. They are living in a way where they have to be depleting the earth as well. So it's all, so deeply connected.
Mm. And you've been on a tour recently, haven't you? Or you were planning to be on a tour, which then got halted because of lockdown, I think.
Yeah.
During your travels, you must have come across some inspiring people and inspiring projects. And what's been particularly interesting to you and resonated with you deeply in relation to your own experiences, working in the States and doing what you do?
Well, I'm just always inspired by people who are standing up. Everyday people who see something wrong and they just decide to stand up to it, whether it's creating a small nonprofit that works to make a positive difference in their community, or just an individual person who is changing their life, starting to grow their own food and ride a bike and, remove their dependence upon a broken system, or people who use their positions, whether it's lawyers or people in the medical field, or teachers who actually take the position that they have in society to be able to make a positive shift in society. So I'm always inspired by just seeing people that are standing up and finding a way to use their lives to improve the world around them.
Mm. It's that's such a strong sense of vision, though, as well. When it comes to that, it's we're here now and it's not working. The system's not working. The system's broken. And so we all have this vision of somewhere we want to get to. And we're doing the small things we can to try and get there, to make sure that we're contributing to that shift. We're living a life that's not hypocritical. And when you imagine that vision in your mind, what does it look like? What do you work towards?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that I think that in our lifetime that we're going to see an increase in injustice and inequality and this destruction of the natural world. I mean, they say that, something like 10 to 30,000 species are going extinct per year. I don't think we're going to turn that around, and I think that there's a good chance we'll see an acceleration of that sort of destruction. So, but I'm not negative. The situation is what it is. I embrace the time and the place that we're in, and I do what I can do. So I don't have some sort of, beautiful image of what the world can or will become. That's not what drives me. I'm not trying to change the whole world. I don't think that I can. But what I'm very confident of is that I can live in a way and act in a way that improves the quality of life of people and other species around me, and does not decrease the quality of life, while at the same time designing it in a way where it is designed to think in the future as well. But I am thinking very much in the present. The reason why is because I really do believe that I value life. I really think that life matters. And so whether humanity will exist in 300 years or not, doesn't play a role in whether I really strive to do my best today, because I care about people, I care about other species, and I care about the environment as a whole. And if I can do my part to, uplift the situation and not bring it down, then that's worth doing, no matter what happens in the future.
I can imagine that would help you a lot when it comes to resilience, the ability to act in the present with this idea of where you want to be, but not being attached to that outcome, and also the like centrality of joy and and happiness to your work. I think that's so inspiring, like seeing you living like you do. And I've only ever seen pictures of you like smiling, surrounded by people, like in nature. Like, do you find that's the key to your resilience? Like, what keeps you going over all these years?
Yeah, I think you got a pretty good idea there. It is resilience. I look at life through a series of goals. And so I'm constantly making goals in order to affect positive change. And I have small goals and I have big goals. But by working to consistently accomplish those smaller goals, it help me feel empowered and continue to make a difference. If my only goal was to save the world, then every day I would be a failure. But if my goal is just each day to improve the quality of life of a few people or animals, or to clean the world a little bit around me, then I can be successful each day, which means I can go to bed feeling accomplished. And this is a strategy in that I'm a very, goal-oriented person, and that can work in many facets of life. So it's a strategy for making positive change, but it's also a strategy for sanity. Making sure to focus on what I can do and not what I can't do. And of course, still, sometimes I get overwhelmed. I mean, I'm actually pretty overwhelmed. I have been pretty overwhelmed the last couple weeks with all that is going on in the world right now. But the way that I am working to reduce that overwhelm is by staying active, doing what I can, educating myself, and just like action for me keeps me inspired. Inaction is what would allow me to get into a spiral of possible depression or just hopelessness.
Yeah, it's really interesting thinking about like hope and hopelessness, but like I think like recognizing the hopelessness is really key to the ability to like keep yourself going and having hope. And it's like, yeah, like sometimes I think we can deny the hopelessness, but I do think it plays like an important role. It's like if you don't only have hope, it becomes another consumerism thing. It's like always striving to consume more. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about a couple of your projects. Like just on your website, looking at them, they're so cool. Like I love the sound of growing all your own food for a year and foraging everything. I love foraging so much. I only just kind of started foraging a bit a couple of years ago, and still my knowledge is like wild garlic and then that's it. But no, I'm a bit better than that. But I'd love to like hear a bit of stories about your like some of the things you've done, like some of the best things.
Sure. Yeah, well, when I first woke up, food was a big part of that. Realizing what I was putting in my body and the corrupt corporations that I was supporting and the destruction that was coming through every bite. I realized that I was, every bite that I was taking was consuming the planet that I loved. So food was a big centerpiece in shifting my life. And since the beginning, I always had the question, would it be possible to step away from big ag, from the global industrial food system completely, and actually grow and forage all of my food? And 2 years ago I decided to, set out on that mission and see if it was possible. And that's what I did. A year with no grocery stores, no restaurants. That means nothing packaged or processed or shipped long distances. I grew all my food with no pesticides at all, beyond organic, I guess you could say. And, also that meant no dumpster diving. I've done a lot of dumpster diving to raise awareness about food waste, but this was about living off the land, not the waste of the global industrial food system. And it was definitely one of the most beautiful years of my entire life. It was just every meal was a connection to the earth. Every bit of food that I ate, I had my hands as a part of that from the land. And it was a beautiful, deep exploration. And then at the same time, it was a wonderful journey to bring others on. So many people have, given me the feedback that they've started to grow their own food, and they've change where they're getting their food from, starting to source it locally and cook more from scratch. And it's been beautiful to take people on the journey and hear about the positive changes they've made through the journey.
I love that so much. And what did you do in the winter? Or do you live somewhere where it's kind of a similar season all the way through?
I lived in Florida, and Florida has very mild winters. It gets down to freezing a couple of times per winter, so it's not like this year-round haven, but it does have a year-round growing season. And as a complete novice gardener that I wanted to do it in a warm climate where it would be easier and I'd have a year-round growing season. But I'm happy to say that one of my next projects is that I'm going to do it again, but in a cold climate, in a colder climate than anywhere in the UK, which will likely be upstate New York, where there's, a good meter of snow in the winter.
Wow.
So very excited for that.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So you're going to preserve stuff? The
key, if you're looking at self-sufficiency in a colder climate, is to grow a large amount of food during the growing season and to preserve the bounty. And that's what people have been doing for, I guess, thousands of years, preserving the bounty to get them through the winter. And so you have your jams and jellies, and you have your pickled foods and sauerkraut. And then, of course, you have things like potatoes and carrots and beets that can store well through the winter, grain for bread and things like that. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a long winter.
Amazing. I can't wait to follow up on that and see you do it all. And I've got some friends who live in Russia, and there's an amazing tradition there for growing your own food and obviously pickling and preserving through the winter. And their store cupboards are amazing. I think you just need to see a Russian store cupboard and you're going to be inspired for your project. It's so cool. And this month, as part of EcoResolution, we're really looking at the topic of localization as an antidote to consumerism and globalization. How can we live as locally as possible, and why would we want to do that? And so your whole vision with growing your own food and everything is very much around localization, obviously, because you're just growing it all there. I wonder why else localization might be important for you.
Yeah, I think that localization is one of the most important things that we can do, because in a globalized system, what we do is we send all of our resources and our money out into large corporations, and we deplete our own self-sufficiency and sovereignty and our ability to take care of one another, and instead become dependent upon these corporations, which really don't care that much about our communities and us as individuals. That's not their purpose. That's not what they're going for. So I think one of the most important things we can do to redesign our lives and our systems is to relocalize our lives, our food, the way we get around, our transportation, making of all of our different products, taking care of each other and creating relationships with the people next door to us in our community, our clothing, our energy, the way we deal with our waste, everything. Relocalizing, I think, is absolutely one of the biggest keys to a more sustainable and resilient life.
What I love about localization as well is the community, the role of community in localization. It's you can't live a localized life and be cut off from everybody apart from your own immediate bubble. You really realize the importance of the fabric of community and how everybody links together. And I can imagine how you're living now. Community is really important for you. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have designed my life to require community. So right now, with everything that I own fitting into my backpack, what that is that it's actually my embracement of the fact that I am dependent upon others and dependent upon humanity. People like to think that if they earn money and they can buy everything they need and pay for all the services, that they're actually independent and they don't need anybody else. But the truth is that behind every dollar that's spent, there's someone there, and there's other species, and there's an environment. And it's a complete illusion of independence. And it's a big problem because it allows people to not think about the truth behind their actions and the implications behind their actions. And so I've actually forced myself to be dependent upon other people, because I think communities that will really take care of each other are communities that need each other, that really depend on each other. And so I have designed my life to be very, very community oriented, and it's something that I'm constantly working on because I grew up with the independent mindset of, just earning everything and doing everything on your own.
It is amazing how independent we feel, but how that independence is so superficial. That role of community as well when it comes to education and all of those things, like a child embedded in community, like the depth of the education that they receive is so different compared to like a normal route for many. Just before we round up. No. Before we end, I'd love to ask you, like, what brings you most joy in your work and most happiness?
Well, there's definitely a lot of things that bring me joy. Love brings me great joy, whether that's love of a friend or family, or a love of an intimate relationship. That's one of the things that brings me deep bliss, is love. And that love can also be love for just the air, the sun, the water. And that would also, another thing would be connection. Deep connection is what really brings me a place of balance. And for me, when I'm balanced, that's what allows me to be really happy and joyful. And then definitely one of the ways that I get my most, completeness and joy would be when I make other people happy. Living in service and seeing that I'm benefiting other people really is a big thing for me. And then the other thing that really brings me great joy is when I see the wheels inside people's heads turning, when I'm explaining something to them in a way they've never thought of it before, and it gets them to rethink their life and their actions. So through my extreme activism, I just love seeing people just totally rethinking their lives. And that is something that really keeps me inspired and going and feeling purposeful.
Yeah, I think having purpose and belonging in the world today is such a key to happiness. And as we turn away from consumerist lifestyle, celebrate and reweave like community around us, realize how interconnected we are to everybody and everything around us, like all of our relationships, how important they are. I can really see how that would create a lot of happiness and fulfillment. And seeing how you're living your life is definitely like a cue card for inspiring change in so many others. And if we wanted to continue following you on your journey, what are you up to next? How could we do that?
Well, just I post on social media a fair bit. That's one of my balances of life, is making sure to spend enough time offline. That's one of my main struggles, actually. But Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, if you just type in Rob Greenfield, I'm sure I'll pop up. And then my website's robgreenfield.org, and there's a lot of inspiration and education there. There's over 400 pages. So it's just a huge amount of knowledge on there for people.
Great. Thank you so much.